for you today. With us is JuliaGrace, or Dr. Jester. She will be with us for half an hour to 45 minutes here talking about, in general, our mental health during this time. We will be focusing on stereotyping, stigmatization, and woman-sized discrimination. She will also be discussing her unique work with HAC. She is I will let her introduce herself in a minute, but she's a associate professor of psychology at HAC Virtual Campus. She is a social psychologist with a research background in stereotyping and stigmatization, specifically focused on women and size discrimination. And without further ado, welcome, JuliaGrace, and if you can introduce yourself to our audience. Oh my goodness, we can't hear you.
Oh, you muted her. You gotta unmute her.
I muted you. I am so sorry. Hold on. There you go.
Okay, yeah.
Now we're back.
Well, hi. I'm Dr. Grace Jester. You guys can call me JuliaGrace. I have an interdisciplinary Ph.D. from Miami University of Ohio in social psychology and theater with a women's studies concentration. Basically, I like to go to school.
Love it.
But it's a good background because I was able to integrate theater into my psychological work, and my focus was on women's issues, such as my master's work was on women's understanding of their own voice, and my doctoral work was on size discrimination of women. So, and then I've been teaching since 2003 at the college level, and I've been in my current position for, I think, 9 years. And I teach fully virtually at my current institution. That's who I am.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for joining us. And I know we're going to dig deep and ask a very specific question, but if you don't mind, if you can explain to everyone listening now, what is discrimination? What is woman-sized discrimination, stigmatization, stereotype, in a simple wording so they can understand?
Sure.
What does that mean?
Well, we've all heard of stereotypes, and we know that stereotypes are the thoughts that we have about people based upon their group membership. So things like men are on average stronger than women. It's a stereotype, but it's not always true. So there are definitely women who are stronger than men. And that's the problem with stereotypes. Stereotypes are what we call heuristic shortcuts, which merely means that they are quick ways for us to make judgments about people. Stereotypes in and of themselves are not bad, that process. It's just a way of categorizing and thinking about things.
Right.
Bad about them is when we apply them unilaterally to people, we ignore evidence to the contrary, and when the content of those stereotypes was grossly inaccurate. Stereotypes also have some good information in them, good as in the stereotype is positive, such as the stereotype that Asians are good at math. It's not always accurate. And even though it has a positive connotation, good at math, it's still something negative, because if you're Asian and you need help with math, you're not going to get that help because people assume they know something about you.
Right.
Stigmatization is related to stereotyping, but it's not quite the same thing. Stigmatization is the way in which you are blamed for your membership in a stereotyped category. It's your fault, and you're supposed to feel shame for being a part of that. So stigmatization is shame on you for being part of that group. So shame on you for, in the instance of my work, shame on you for being fat. Shame on you for not being skinny, for you're being blamed for it and meant to feel bad for your membership in that group. And we're certainly not the only ones. Stigmatization happens to all sorts of stereotyped groups. But does that help explain those two concepts a bit?
Yes, it definitely does.
Yes, it does. It does. Explain it to me. I'm not sure about what my thinking, but we do face those type of stereotype in every aspect that we're living. I mean, just if you will, if you can give us some more examples, so it can
Sure.
be more understanding on like daily things that we face every day, and we can look at it and say, huh, this is a stereotyping. I didn't think of it this way.
Well, in terms of stereotyping, the content of that, there's stereotypes about almost every group. Think about and picture in your head a truck driver.
Right.
Odds are you just pictured a man, right? We have
Mhm.
a stereotype about the type of people who are going.
Oh.
That's a simplistic example, but immediately when we start to think of those things, when we start to picture someone or make assumptions about them just upon their category in a group, we're stereotyping. And
Right.
it goes back to, again, when I say what stereotyping is a process, it's not automatically bad. It's the way in which we then see a woman who's a truck driver and go, oh God, why do you want to be a truck driver? You're a woman.
Yeah.
That's when it's a problem.
Right.
And we're stigmatizing people when we're using that stereotype to have negative action in the world. And the
Right.
content of a lot of stereotypes is horrible. So the ideas about, African Americans,
Yeah.
a lot of negative stereotypes about African Americans, and African Americans are often made to feel bad about themselves for that.
Right.
There's a lack of representation and images in the media of African Americans. There's also a lack of representation of women of size, especially in any sort of normal life position.
Right.
I have a background in acting as well as theater, as well as psychology.
Yeah.
And it was never professional acting, just, college and some community theater and stuff like that. But the interesting thing about that was that in acting, if you're fat, you are always the nurses, the grandmas, the mothers. You're never the leads. And that's part of the representation issues that we see.
Right.
We're not seeing enough images of people to counteract the stereotypes. For instance, large women who are the romantic lead in a movie, or think about the ways in which large women are never really seen as being with thin men.
Mhm.
Right.
In media, we see fat men with thin women all the time. It's
Yeah.
actually a trope in media.
Right.
The large guy with the hot wife, but we don't see the reverse. And when we do, it's something like what's that movie? Isn't It Romantic that came out the other year?
Yeah.
Her being with the thin guy was the joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, when we're talking about this stuff, we're seeing all these ways in which it impacts all the areas in our life, and
Right.
in which we internalize the information about those stereotypes.
It's amazing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just asking if that made sense.
It definitely makes sense. I actually watched a documentary, I think it was like last week, and it was talking about how in the African American community, most of the time in movies, the African American male would be deflected as a gangster, a gangbanger, a drug dealer, never
Stereotype.
anything, never positive, never, that stand-up father, or the father is not in the family, or, and it goes into our minds. We really don't think about it when we watch these movies and these shows. It's entertainment, but those types of subliminal messages go into our mind and they stay there. So then when we see, if we go to the grocery store and we see an African American man who, is not dressed 100%, oh, he must be a drug dealer or a gangster, or something like that. Those things stay with us. So it's extremely important to talk about discrimination in all forms, because we hold on to it even if we don't think that we are. There's been a couple of times where I'm just in the store and I just sit there and I'll just look and be like, oh man, I wonder, does he have kids? He probably don't take care of his kids. And it just comes in your head and you can't help it.
Yes. Yes. And we often do things to try and combat the stereotypes about ourselves, or
Right.
we just give up.
Right.
So, for instance, in my doctoral research, one of the women talked to me about how she always had to go above and beyond to prove that she wasn't the stereotype. So let's talk about the stereotype of fat women. Okay. I am going to ask you, can you give me one aspect of what that stereotype is out there about fat women? Fat women are.
Um, I don't really know. Do you mean like what people would say that they are?
We lost her.
Oh no. Well, if I could think of one, I would say that a stereotype would be that, big women are always eating. I hear that all the time. But I mean, I would say both of them eat all the time.
Until
If
that,
I could think of one, if I could think of a stereotype, that would be it. That they're always eating that. I can't wait for her to come back, but I
yeah,
really, these stereotypes that we give each other is so important for us to talk about it because they actually hinder our mental health.
they do.
Because
They do. And then
because
until she's back,
okay,
Dr. Dr. Jester is back. There you are. There you are. We lost you for a minute.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we
yes.
can hear you clear.
Hold on a
So
second.
So, to recap what she was talking about, I think she's fixing her camera right now. When we hear something and we see it all the time in the media, it's being hammered into our head. It become a reality, just
right,
like what Maya just said. We seen in a movie that they represent, you are back, they represent like blackmail as gangsters, as
Yes.
right,
bad influence. I have a couple of my friends, they said automatically when they're walking at night and they see a black man walking towards them, they clinch to their bags and they try to escape, think of ways this person is going to murder me, person is going to do this and that. So
right.
do you want to talk to us more about this, Dr. Julia? Yes.
Yes, and that is application of the stereotype.
Mhm.
Even if you logically think to yourself, I shouldn't think that, I shouldn't feel that, that is so ingrained in that particular stereotype
Right.
that, yeah, people react that way and people make judgments. And when I first cut out, Maya, you were talking about how part of the stereotype is about women of size is that they're always eating. And that is absolutely it. That they lack willpower, that they're lazy, that they're always eating, even that they're unclean, and in general that they're not as good as thin people.
Mhm.
And so people have to do a lot to overcome those stereotypes. So going back to the example of the African American man walking down the street at night, one of the things he might have to do is make sure he doesn't appear like the stereotype.
Right.
The idea of smiling and appearing less threatening and being overly friendly to combat that stereotype when most of the time you just want to walk home. You just want to not have to deal with it. Well, women of size have to deal with that as well. They have to put it out there that they are not that stereotype. So, for instance, in my doctoral research, one of the women talked about how she had to work more hours and work harder than other people to overcome that stereotype that women of size are lazy. Mm-hmm. That even on dress down Fridays, she dressed up to the nines because if she looked sloppy at all, people would think she's sloppy because she's fat, not she's dressed down because it's dress down Friday.
Yeah.
And so that's all about trying to overcome those stereotypes and stigmatization that they have of us. And then a lot of it's really explicit, like those women who, whether they intended or not, clench themselves when the African American male passes them at night. They're sending him a message. And that message can make him feel bad about himself or make him feel agitated towards them. And people send stigmatized groups messages all the time and often in very inappropriate places.
Yeah.
So would you guys like to hear a couple examples of stigmatizing of women of size, times when they've been made to feel shame?
Please do.
One of the most common issues comes in terms of visiting doctors. Women of size are often criticized at doctors' offices for being fat. And even if they're not there for anything related to that. So the women in my research talked to me about how one went in for an eye infection and the doctor wound up lecturing her about being fat and it not being healthy and it's all her fault. And here's what she needed to do to fix it. And what that does is it makes it less likely for the woman to seek out medical help in the future, making things even worse for her. And so this happens in all sorts of arenas. People feel like they can say things or do things to people based upon their membership in these stigmatized groups.
Right.
I once went into a store with some friends, and we were getting ice cream. My friend had ice cream. My friend had ice cream. When I was grabbing mine, this woman came up to me and said, "Honey, do you actually think you need that?"
Oh my God.
People think that, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking at her like, "Oh, you're going in my research project. I'm describing this in my dissertation."
Wow.
But I mean, like, this is the sort of stuff that happens in terms of stigmatization. It's your fault. You're a member of this stereotyped group, and you should feel bad about it. And it's internalized from the messages that people give us, from the media images that we see of people of size, or of African-American men, whatever group we're talking about. I mean, think about images of people of size in the media. It's gotten better in recent years, but think about how many, a little bit, yeah. Think about how many movies people wore fat suits in. And the whole point of that was to make fun of them. I read a great article a few years back about how fat suits were the new blackface. No one thinks it's okay to wear blackface, but people still thought it was okay to put on the persona of a fat person and make fun of them.
Right.
And all of the jokes are about, you're so fat that.
Right. And you know what? I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. I don't even know what it's called, but it has like Kevin Hart, it has The Rock in it, and it demonstrated in the beginning on how he became a bodybuilder, and that's because in school he was bullied because of his weight, and they actually pushed him in the auditorium of the school out of the bathroom where he was showering, and they embarrassed him. Mm-hmm. And they were saying all these jokes, and like I just said earlier, like we don't ever think about what we're watching. But those things go into our minds, and when we are out in everyday life, we do it. And sometimes we don't mean to do it. You know, it's not like we're being spiteful or things like, it's just what we've been taught every day by what we hear. Not even just movies, but music. Music in itself. I don't even know if they do music videos anymore. I'm not that old, but I don't watch them. But music videos, music videos are so degrading. Or I'm gonna say they used to be, because I haven't seen any lately.
Many of them still can be. They're all on YouTube now. That's where they go.
Okay.
But yes, they still can be, especially within certain genres.
Right.
There's tropes, there's common themes that occur in them in terms of what women are supposed to be like in rap videos, for instance, or what men are supposed to be like in certain ones. And it feeds that stereotype when we keep seeing those images again. And it especially feeds it when we don't see images that contradict it.
Right.
So,
well, going back to how we are portrayed in the media, like if we talk about women's size, and you did mention something about women's size discrimination, about how even showing women with a large body type in the movie and making it as a joke, what would that do to our self-esteem? To every young woman out there, self-esteem, and especially during this time, I'm just gonna link this with the corona now, and with us being home, we are all eating unhealthy, we're not exercising. Some people have medical condition, and I want you to touch on that. So we need to understand that not because you are overweight, because you are lazy, that automatically look at you and think you're lazy, you don't want to do the job. So I know I give you three questions in one sentence. But if
like, which part do you want me to talk about first? Well, let's talk about the media. When you don't see positive representations of yourself in the media, it has a negative impact on your self-esteem. So I'll give you two examples. One's really, really old, but still relevant. Whoopi Goldberg used to do stand-up comedy, and one of her big things was the little black girl who wanted long blonde hair, because she saw no images of herself in the world. All images of beauty for her were of white people with blonde hair and long hair. And so that character was representing that idea of, I don't see pictures of me being beautiful. Mm-hmm. I don't see pictures of people who look like me. And that happens to all sorts of stigmatized groups. Think about the Oscars. Mm-hmm. Who wins? It's still all white. it is still mostly white, which is ridiculous in this day and age because it's white people making decisions about white people's movies.
Yeah.
It's the representation isn't there. So when you say, I want to be an amazing filmographer when I grow up, and all the filmographers are white and you're black, it's hard to see the possibility, the road, to see the mentors that are there.
Right.
And the same comes with representations in the media. If you never see an image of a fat woman getting loved, then how is it for you to say, I can be loved if you're a fat woman?
Yeah.
We see this all the time. I read something right before this thing about a little boy who was wearing a Spider-Man shirt. Mm-hmm. And he was asked who his favorite Spider-Man was. He said, Peter Parker. And the guy talking to him said, well, mine's Miles. And the kid said, who's Miles? And when the kid got to see a black Spider-Man, he was like, oh my God, Spider-Man looks like me. Spider-Man looks like me. It's an amazing thing to see representations of yourself positively, to see your skin color, your size, your gender, something about you. When I say things are getting a little better, we're starting to see more representation. We're starting to see dolls with disabilities. We're starting to see different sizes, different body shapes in Barbies. We're starting to see greater propensity for variation in colors of characters on kids' cartoon shows, in movies, in TV. But there's still so far we have to go.
Right.
So what would that do to the young women and men, or young ladies' self-esteem, if I say?
Well, it has a negative impact on your self-esteem if you don't see it. When you do see it, it's finally like, you can look like me and you can be beautiful. You can look like me and you can have love. You can look like me and other people will want to watch you or buy you or this or that in terms of the dolls and the TV shows. It can give you that sense of, I fit in, I belong, which we miss a lot when there's no positive representations of us. And there's still so many groups that there aren't. There aren't enough representations in our culture of all the different variations. Think about, when was the last time you went to a store and saw in the normal doll aisle a Latina looking doll?
I don't think I ever.
Right.
I don't think I've ever seen one.
So the message still, when you're a little kid and you walk down that doll aisle, what's the message you still receive? White and skinny is what's beautiful. When you are a boy and you walk down the aisle of toys that is blue, blue, blue and meant for boys.
Yeah.
Boys are supposed to be white, strong, things like that. There's just not the representation, and that has this negative impact on our self-esteem.
Right.
Shout out to our state representative for the 87th district, Heather McDonald. She's always present. She's always out there trying to make a change and a difference in our community here in Mechanicsburg and Cam Hill area. Heather is asking, I'm not sure if you can see her question here, if you don't mind answering.
So do I think Photoshop bodies should appear in advertisements? Yes and no. You didn't think I was going to give you a straight answer on that one, did you? Come on. Advertisements aren't real. Advertisements are the perfect idea of something. When you look at a McDonald's burger in an advertisement, it looks nothing like that sad, sad piece of soggy bread that you actually get at a McDonald's.
Sad ain't the word. Depressing is the word.
sad thing. So it's not that photoshopping is bad. It's that people don't realize it's photoshopped. It's that people look at that photoshopped image and think that's what I should look like. It's the same issue that goes on with influencers right now. Beauty influencers, exercise influencers. They are positioning themselves, not even necessarily photoshopping, positioning themselves to look their absolute best. And there's this implied message of, you have to look like that too. Well, hey, they don't look like that. They don't look like that 99.9% of the time. And I really applaud the influencers who are doing side-by-side photos of, here's what I really look like. And here's what I look like when I position the light and my body exactly perfectly, because they show that you don't look like that all the time. So is photoshopping bad? No, Photoshop in and of itself is not bad. What's bad is when it is held up as the ideal, as the reality. And people are trying to achieve what can only be achieved by adjusting pixels. So I would like to see less photoshopping. I think it's used too much. And I'm really happy that some stars, for instance, are currently saying, don't Photoshop my images. Don't post Photoshopped images of me, and are calling out media on it. We need to call them out more, especially
Right.
when they're not presenting it that way.
Right.
And I just want to say something when it comes to the Photoshop, and it gives the same thing that you said first. It gives us an ideal image. And I am against it, Heather, by the way. I think it shouldn't be there. I mean, adjusting your lights in the picture is different. It is deceiving. You know, people are going to think, just like in some online dating, you get a picture of someone who look, you know, like, I don't know, Denzel Washington maybe, and you go and you are already
You know your type now.
and, and then you find someone who doesn't look like. It is deceiving, but at the same time, it doesn't do the same damage as when someone you know, as famous. I applaud Alicia Keys for going makeupless, and for fighting and stuff like that, and so many other actors who are, whether we like it or not, our idols. Even if
Right.
they don't represent what we represent, you see them every day, and they form some kind of idealism, or some kind of something that you need to follow. My voice
Right.
needs to be like that. My waist needs to be like that. My butt. I mean, this is just, you know, an example. But yeah.
And here's the thing. I can see your point about it saying no Photoshop. But what I'm saying is the issue isn't Photoshop. The issue is that we think Photoshop is real, and that people then try to achieve it. If it
Right.
was clear, this is Photoshop, like that commercial with that burger. Okay,
Yeah,
if they're going to Photoshop the burger, they're going to Photoshop the person in the commercial too. And if
definitely.
you look at that and go, everything about this is fake, but it's kind of interesting because I recognize it as an idealized version and not reality,
Yeah.
fine. It's when that idealized version, people look at it and think that is reality and I must achieve that. That's when it has the negative impact on people.
Yes.
So with all the negative, I mean, with everything that we see in movies and shows and what we hear in music, how can, I'm an advocate for young people. Uh, I've suffered from depression. I had a child and I gained a lot of weight afterwards. So I've struggled with my weight for the past 5 years, and I've gone back and forth, and I've tried a whole bunch of things. So what could you say to young women like me who have that problem, who, their self-esteem isn't the best, and what can they do to help them? Like, being positive, that's great, but when you're surrounded by all the negativity, when you watch TV and you see this image of beauty, it's hard. I remember when TSO first started, when we first started our radio show and people can actually see us. I don't think you understand how many people were shocked to see that I look the way that I do. Like, they were like, "Oh, this is what you look like? Like, your voice doesn't sound like you would look like this." And it really hurt me to the point to where I felt, very self-conscious. So what can you tell young women, or just women in general, to make them, I don't even know how, like,
This.
right,
Seek out the body positive people. Seek out, and there's so many of them now. There are so many of them. Seek out the body positive messages. Seek out the messages that say you're okay at any size. Seek out the science that says health is possible at any size. I'll give you an example. People often think that fat people are unhealthy. But you can be totally unhealthy and be skinny as a rail, and you can be totally healthy and be fat. There's a whole range. It's this misconception. To give you an example, every time I go to the doctors, every single time I go to a new doctor, they want to test me for diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. I have never had any of those three my entire life, but every new doctor I meet wants to test me for that because every doctor thinks fat people must be unhealthy.
Wow.
And so look for the messages that contradict that, because research doesn't show that that's true. Research doesn't actually show that all fat people are unhealthy. Research doesn't show that people should be one size. And there's so much body positivity out there now. And one of the things we can choose to do is reject some of those negative images and seek out the positive ones. You can be healthy at any size. You can lead a productive life. You can be beautiful at any size. It has nothing to do with your value as a person.
So the ignorance had nothing to do with education, because even doctors who are holding higher degrees, they still stereotype. They still
Right.
Yes.
one and just use the judgment. Is that because we are like so deep into what we hear and see, not just media, reading from young age?
Yes.
You give the babies, you give the girls the Barbie doll that looks like, some specific figure that you want to follow. So this has become your lifelong dream. Is that the reason, or you think something else is?
Many things are going on there. One, doctors are human beings. We tend to put doctors up on a pedestal and act like they are gods. They are not. They are human beings. They are fallible. They have their own stereotype, stigmatization, background, how much they've sought out information on what is true or not true about people of size or about different groups, how influenced they are by things. I mean, and medicine is always changing. 30 years ago, all articles about fat people in medical journals pretty much said fat people are sick. Not mentally sick, just sick.
Yeah.
And so what's happened was there was a confirmation bias in the research. There's actually been a confirmation bias about a lot of things in the research, where they would start by saying, I want to discover how fat people are sick. So they would go out and find sick fat people to study instead of just studying fat people in general and finding out, well, I wonder how many of them are sick.
Yeah.
And that confirmation bias exists in so many areas of research. To give you another example, research on homosexual parents. For a long time, the research was focused on how homosexual parents were not good parents. They caused problems in children's lives. But do you know what they did? They went out and got research using parents who were called, let me restate that. Mm-hmm. Parents who had the Child Protective Services called on them. Mm-hmm. They study disenfranchised groups already, rather than really taking a survey of gay parents and seeing how their kids are. Guess what? Gay parents are just as good and just as bad as straight parents.
Yeah.
They screw up and raise good kids at the exact same proportion as straight people. There's no difference. But the research was really biased for a long time. And so if you're a doctor and you read some of that older research, and there's not much of the research that says, no, really, fat people can be healthy. Thin people can be very unhealthy. People are people, and they're going to have their biases. Yeah. And what people also need to do is be their own strong advocates. Walk into that doctor's office and say, I have had myself tested for cholesterol, diabetes many times. You're not testing me for that. I'm here for this, and I need you to focus on my current health issue and not waste time on something else. We need to speak up for ourselves, and we need to contradict those stereotypes everywhere that we can.
Just like the having obesity as part of disability in the medical dictionary, like we were taught it is form of a disability. I mean, that's something, like you said, it had nothing to do with the amount of education that you have. It has something to do with your mentality and what you decide to keep up there in your mind. I heard, I was listening to a lecture before, and the lady came up and she said she went and filed a rape case. I'm not sure where I read it, but I'll find it and put it down here. This whole story, she went out and spoke about this. She said some guy came to her and he said, well, you are lucky you got raped, because this is the only way anyone will touch you, because you're a fat pig. I mean, this is just how bad our mentality and our society can be.
Yes, that's a form of hostile sexism that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. Actually, as we were starting this story, I'm like, okay, either they're going to say that That was the only way the woman was going to have sex, or there's no way you were raped because no one would touch you.
Yeah.
By the way, rape is not about sex.
Yeah.
It is about power. And it's not about the person being raped. It's about the rapist. Yeah. So those sorts of messages are terrible. Or the stereotype that, oh, well, she was wearing a short skirt, so she asked for it. No.
I really need you to talk more about that, the image. Please do.
Well, it's rape myths. And a good colleague of mine does research on this. There's the idea that you can be blamed for what happened to you. It's your fault that you were raped. You were too drunk. You were alone. You were here. Yes, those situations make it more dangerous for a woman to be alone, to be in this place. But actually, most women are raped by acquaintances, not by strangers at a party. Now, that's not to undermine the women who are raped by strangers at a party or on a street. Most women are raped by people that they know, people that they're on a date with, people that they're friends with, someone that they trusted.
Yeah.
And so it's not ever that woman's fault. A woman wearing a short skirt does not deserve to be raped. A woman who is drunk does not deserve to be raped any more than a man who is drunk would deserve to be raped, or a man who is dressed provocatively, whatever that looks like, deserves to be raped, because we don't have a definition for it. We have a definition for when a woman is dressed that way, she's dressed slutty. We do not have a definition for when a man is dressed this way, he is slutty. And that goes back to stereotype and the stigmatization of it's your fault this happened to you.
Yeah.
It's your fault that this occurred. And the best thing we can do is keep contradicting those messages. And part of the problem is the judicial system contributes to that when rapists get off because she was drunk.
Yeah.
Because she was alone at the party. You should have known better than do that. I can't convict this rapist. It'll ruin his life. That is actually said by judges, and it shouldn't ever be. If you damage another person, you are.
I think we have it. Oh, there we are. There you go. You're back.
I froze her saying. I said nothing justifies doing that to a person.
Wrong. I like it. But yeah, this comes in many forms, and we can talk about domestic violence. We can talk about rape. We can talk about trafficking. We can talk about other problem that we face, and not just women and men. And just let me say that and be clear, men get raped also, but because of the stereotype.
There is a stereotype. Men can't be raped. That is a stereotype. So what happens? Men are much less likely to report rape. It's much less likely to be prosecuted, and men are much more likely to be treated negatively because they were a victim.
Yeah. Victim mentality. She will come back. When she comes back, we will continue talking about this. But what I wanted to put pressure on and just talk about, and I don't know what you think, Maya, but men could be victims of stereotyping, not just what we mentioned at the beginning, not just being a thug or someone who is no good. So men can also be stereotyped as being when and reported rape, because the society doesn't look. Continue, because when you cut off, you were saying something very important.
I wish I remember what it was. It was about men are supposed to be strong. They're supposed to be able to take care of themselves. So there's this idea that if you were raped, it's your fault because you're a man. You should have been strong enough. You should have been able to fight that off. And so men are much less likely to report it. So we don't actually have good statistics on how many men are raped.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Men are much less likely to report domestic violence against them because, especially in heterosexual relationships, because there's this idea that, oh, that woman can't hit you. How would you let that happen? There's this stereotype. Men should not allow that to occur. And it prevents them from coming forward and getting the help they want. And again, this is all connected to stereotypes about what men should be and what women should be and what's okay and what's not okay.
Yes. There is a question here. Are you able to see it?
How can a woman overcome the negative customs and traditions that restrict her and cannot do anything with the concept of society around her? I don't entirely understand what it's asking.
Basically, this person is specifically live from Sudan, and the custom and tradition there make women are not just a third degree resident, but lower than dogs and anything else.
Yeah.
There is a lot of restriction on how you dress, like what you said earlier, dressing whatever it is.
Provocatively.
And wearing a short skirt or not covering your hair, that allow me.
Yes.
That's mean you're giving an open invitation for someone to come and rape you. If you don't want it, don't do that, or simply don't go out. So kind of tradition and customs.
Yes.
Hammer this. What can you do as a woman to overcome this if the whole society is against you?
And let me say, I am speaking from a position of privilege. I am white.
Yeah.
I live in the United States. I may be fat and short and stigmatized and stereotyped in other ways, but I absolutely have privilege as a Caucasian person in the United States. I do not have many of those limits and restrictions. And the more limits and restrictions you have, the more women are seen as less than men, the worse it is and the harder it is to overcome. But in every culture in which there is a gender divide, a separation between men and women and what men can do and what women can do, there's always been that thing of, if you don't cover your hair, it's your fault. If you wear a short skirt, it's your fault. At one point in time, it was, if you show your ankles, it's your fault. Ankles were at one point considered slutty. Mm-hmm. Seriously.
Wow.
Yes. Showing your ankles was once considered provocative. And so
how they feel with the part of the body at that time.
Well, because whatever part of the body is, it's whatever is restricted from being seen in that culture at that time. So in cultures where women are supposed to cover their hair is considered that provocative body part. In the United States, where we pretty much show everything everywhere, because let's go back to the music videos. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when a woman in a bikini doesn't attract attention in terms of it being, too much exposure, you have to really so it's the short skirts, it's things like that. I mean, sure. But in another culture, it takes less. It depends on that culture's norms.
Yeah.
And in terms of what to do, they can only do what they can within the structure of that culture. And I can't advise on what to do in the Sudan because I don't want to give advice that would cause a woman to get damaged.
But to overcome, I don't think she's asking what she can do to stop this from happening. Like personally, what I understood from her question is, as a woman there, I grew up in Sudan and I grew up in this same environment. You have to be a strong person. A strength is not, everybody's strong. To me, I think every woman is strong by default, and that is stereotype too. But anyways, you just have to find that strength in you, men and women. We all have something that we can bring out and make it as positive.
The other thing is band together with other women. And I don't mean, walk down the street in a gang. I mean, very often in protection of ourselves, we take down other people.
Yeah.
We separate ourselves from them. And the more you support one another, the more that you are there for one another, the more that you lift each other up, the better it is. Because then you have a social support system. You have someone backing you up. There's definitely a divide between women, between groups of people, so that a thin woman doesn't necessarily see herself reflected in a fat woman, even though they're both women. And so we can often see that divide based on caste systems or other aspects of culture. And let's be women. Let's be people. Yeah, let me be more broad there. Let's be people. Mm-hmm. Let's focus on supporting one another rather than protecting the self and sacrificing the other.
Because that's what a lot of women do. There's not a lot of women who can actually come together with other women to bring forth positivity. Mm-hmm. And that's because they have this facade that they've put up of themselves, of what their image is, of who they're going to hang around and who they're going to communicate on a daily basis. So that's one of the chains that we have to break, because we have to be able to work together and come together in order for the things that are around us to change. Because if we stay at odds, everything's going to stay the same.
Yes. And in some more general advice, if someone makes you feel bad in a part of your life, don't have them be part of your life.
Thank you.
Don't keep around people who make you feel bad for being who you are. If you're in a relationship and someone is criticizing you and saying, well, you can't leave me because you can't get anyone better. I'm the best you'll ever get. Well, better would be not having that person in your life.
Right.
Better would be anything other than that. And we tend to do these things where we keep friends who make us feel bad because they're making themselves feel better by criticizing you.
Right.
So
you're so right now. Oh my word.
I know.
If there's someone in your life who exudes negativity, take a step back from them. If there is a TV show that makes you feel bad about yourself, turn off the TV. Go find something more positive to watch. If there's something that is sending a bad message, don't support that thing that sends that bad message by continuing to buy from it or watch it or engage with it. Walk away from the bad messages and the negative people.
Right.
And seek out those body positive, skin tone positive, however you want to phrase it. Seek out those places of support and those positive images that you can find. We imbibe so much, especially now with everyone at home. We are imbibing so much media, and so much of it is so negative.
Oh my word, yeah.
And we have the power to turn it off.
Yeah.
You kind of got to like protect yourself. If nobody else is going to do it, you have to do it yourself. You have to filter out that.
Yeah. I just want to say something back. As women, what you said, I'm just going to put it in different words. We always, me and Maya, say we need to lift each other's up. I mean, from what I'm seeing, we are against each other. Like when you see a woman doing good, you tend to either get jealous, and that goes to men as well. But if you feel, you're not taking away from my success, but we can build each other up, and we can support each other, and all rise up together. That will make a huge difference. But again, what you just said is like, if you have negative people around you, cut them out of your life. You don't need this negativity. You don't need none of that. Finish, done.
And even if it's not people in your life, if someone gives you a negative message, try not to internalize it. I know that's really hard to do. Yeah. But going back to that woman who said, do you really need that ice cream? Yeah. My friends and I are going out for ice cream. It'd be really silly if I sat here eating air.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Yeah.
Right.
You don't have to let that person make you feel bad. And that's really hard to do. It is really hard to do. You have to practice in your mind or even verbally telling that person to take a flying leap. Yeah. I had to stop myself from cursing there.
We got it. But that was in a relationship. Can you just talk about poisonous relationship? Like you said a very, very good point. If someone is making you feel, and we did a whole episode, we talked about domestic violence and how people don't realize the sign. Domestic violence does not have to be putting your hand in physical. It could be emotional, psychological, like you said, and income, economically, all that. But if someone is talking down to you in the relationship, making you feel like you can't do better, or no one is going to be with you because you're ugly, you're fat, you're dumb, you're this and that, someone's degrading you, you need to get out. What would you say, JuliaGrace?
I would say you need to get out. You just covered it.
Yeah.
I don't have much more to say to that. And that's not my area of expertise. So I also don't want to talk about what the research has to say on that. But we internalize these things. We accept these negative messages, and whether it's coming at us from the media or from the person that we share a bed with, we have the right to say no, that I don't accept that message. I don't accept that negative perception of me, and to walk away. And the problem is it's tied up in self-esteem. And people who are the aggressor in those toxic relationships, they seek out people that have that lower self-esteem, that they know they can do that to. And so it feeds on itself. Someone already thinks I'm not good enough, and then they've got a partner saying, well, I'm with you, but you're not really good enough.
Yeah.
It just makes them cycle. And it's really hard to break those cycles.
It's
and I don't want to be glib and say, just do it. But just keep telling yourself, I have the right to reject negative messages about who I am.
Right. And you have to realize that the longer that you stay, the more that you're going to hold on to these words and these actions, and they're going to impact you. And if you have children, they're going to impact them as well.
Right.
Coming from somebody who's been in a relationship where, some verbal, abuse was done, like those things stay with you, and they stay with you for a very long time. And even when you're in a happy relationship and everything is great, you still have those thoughts, and they just come out at weird moments. You can just be sitting on the couch and then bam, you're just like, oh my word, why are you looking at that girl like that on TV? Like, it's it just.
Well, I agree with you. I'm a woman of size. And I have been a woman of size almost my entire life. There was a very short period where I wasn't, from when I was a child. And I internalized a lot of those messages. I am a psychological researcher who researched fat stigmatization, and I still internalize some of it. That's how hard it is to overcome this.
Yeah.
And so, I've been with my partner for almost 20 years, and I still have moments of doubt. I'm like, oh, he could have done better. But you know what? No. He's with the person he loves. I'm with the person I love. It doesn't matter. But we do internalize these messages, and it's not something you fix by just saying, I'm going to stop now. Mm-hmm. It's something you fix by constantly pushing back against those negative messages, whether they come from the outside or whether they come from inside your own head.
Right.
So when you hear yourself go, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I'm not thin enough, maybe I'm not this, well, you can tell your inner voice to shut up too.
Exactly. Thank you. You have the power of turning the TV off and turning your inner. You do have inner,
Right. You can select what messages. Now, it's not easy. It's hard. It's hard, especially the messages that you internalize. It is hard to combat those.
Right.
But if you just keep at it, it helps. It does.
It does.
Hiba asked a question. She said, what about the COVID-19 news? I'm not understanding your question exactly. If are you talking about its effect on us, or I'm not sure.
If the person is asking about the negativity of that, turn that off too. You don't have to read every article on COVID-19. It can make you feel bad about yourself. It can make you worry about what's going on in the world, about the risk of touching or doing anything, and you can turn that off too. One of the things that that is recommended is limit your amount of exposure to it.
Yeah.
Check it. Say, I'm going to only check in for 5 minutes at this time of day and just see what's going on, and that's it. Don't keep imbibing it, because it just keeps feeding that message of, oh my God, everything's going terrible. This is an apocalypse, which I jokingly refer to this as an apocalypse. But if it's making you feel bad, limit your exposure. You don't want to hide under a rock and deny it, but you don't want to watch it every second of it and imbibe all that negativity.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Do you have any more questions, Maya?
Good. Other than I need you to be my best friend so that you can talk to me every day.
We love you, everyone. And yes, she got it right. I was thinking about toxic, the word, when I said, it didn't come to me, and I said poisonous relationship, toxic relationship. Thank you, Gigi. But we really learned a lot from our conversation with you, and I see so many people are engaging in the conversation and watching and listening to us right now. So, this is a very, very big subject. We cannot just cover it in this small amount we have. But if you want to say, I don't want to say lost advice, or, to make it look like, formal, but if you have something, and we would love to have you again to discuss more, but if you have something that you want to say to everyone that is listening to us now about this, what would you say? Advice, not just for now and for the rest of their life, something that you think will help us all overcome and become a better version of ourselves.
Look for the positive representations of yourself. Look for the positive images of who you are in the media, in the things that you read and then watch. And the next time you see someone, try not to immediately accept whatever stereotype you hold about them. Try to remember that you are not the victim here entirely, that we all stereotype people. Mm-hmm. And that maybe while you are feeling stigmatized by someone else, there may be someone that you're stigmatizing.
Yeah.
Right.
There may be someone you're making judgments about. So next time you see a fat woman, don't assume she's lazy. Next time you see an African male, don't assume he's violent.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Think about the way in which you yourself stereotype others and how you may be having a negative impact on someone, and try and be that positive representation in the world.
JuliaGrace, we were so, I can never make a heart like Maya doesn't. Oh, look at you. I love it.
Yeah, I always feel like I'm getting my
We love you, everyone out there. Love you, and we appreciate everything you do. And I don't think we got a chance to talk about what you did at Hack, and that's something I really want you to talk about.
Yeah, we didn't do that.
If you don't mind, we will find you and have you again.
That sounds ominous.
I know. Stop.
We will find you. No, you won't. Bye.
But if you don't mind coming again to talk about this, for everyone who's interested in going back to school and doing online, and they don't know how they can learn from that model. And I want to say thank you. You were the first person that I learned from when I went to school as an adult, of course, but you made a huge impact in my life. I don't know I ever told you that, but you made me love psych, you made me love school, and I thank you for that and for everything that you're doing for not just the women, but to educate and raise awareness and be a voice for the voiceless. We thank you, and thank you for giving us the time. Maya.
I just want to say this has been awesome. I'm going to extend an open invitation to come on the TSO Live talk show to speak to, all of our followers that we have on there. It's so important to, kind of open up that jar and talk about it instead of keeping the lid on it all the time. And you're amazing. And I mean, I feel better just after this interview. I don't know if y'all feel better from watching, but I hope y'all did, because I feel better just from being a part of this interview. And Hagir, I thank you for letting me be a part. This was awesome. I needed this 110,000%. Okay, I needed this desperately. So just keep doing the great work, and don't let nobody make you not want to do this anymore. Okay, because we need you. You're important.
Thank you guys for watching and tuning in. We appreciate your time, and thank you, Dr. Jester or JuliaGrace, whatever you prefer us to call you. We love you and thank you very much.
No problem.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.